All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday, 1st of July, 2022 Node API meeting. Does anybody, before we get started with our usual agenda, does anybody have any announcements they would like to make? Nope. All right, then let's get started. Let me share my screen. All right, and we'll go through the normal milestone list. All right, so we have the first one, a drive towards full coverage. I don't think there's been anything new here, and I haven't seen any new PRs. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's still this one here. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I should have plenty of time now to look at it before I go on vacation. So hopefully I'll look at this one after this meeting, and then we can get this merged in. I remember the question that I was having was, I was unsure as to how this call here, because it's saying new binding, new target callback, and this new target callback is this function here, returning the new target. And I was a little unsure how calling that would be equal to the actual function definition. This one makes sense because when you have, because they're not calling new, so the new target would be undefined. But I'm not exactly sure how calling this with no, how it just would be the function. Obviously the tests are passing, so it's correct, but I just would like to get a little more understanding of that before we merge it in.
Maybe constructor creates some kind of variable and then this new target callback. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little odd to me why the new target would be the function itself, because it's not like bound or anything. So I can take a look at that after this call. So let's see what else. I don't think there are any other new ones corresponding to tests. So then we can move forward. We have the stale issues. I think this is just the one about the proxy implementation.
Yeah, still no progress.
Okay, no worries. There was just the thought of moving it over, not in Node Core, but into the add-on examples repo.
So what I'm looking at right now, like I actually, None has a bunch of very good unit tests. Some of them you kind of showing how to use all this interceptor, named interceptors and other stuff. So pretty much just trying to re-implement exactly the same unit test using proxy. Like my previous unit test, which I submitted in main repo, was showing how to use proxy. Mm-hmm. If you look with named interceptors. So I kind of currently kind of look into how to re-implement this stuff using proxy. So I think it should be possible.
I see.
It's not exactly the same as in the question. The questions are said about non-setter and non-getter, but I think it's internally non-setter and getter by object template inside of V8. I would assume still kind of based on this property getter, property setter, whatever we see in these examples in some sense. So my assumption is
sounds good to me. Then that is it for the stale issues. Then we have tracking issue. Don't think anything new has been added here. Then we can go to NPM. So look at weekly downloads. Yeah, pretty much still the same. Nothing new here, and we are still on version 5. I don't think there's anything new in the pipeline to add, so we'll probably be on version 5 until we find anything new. When I came here, I remembered this one down here, the implementing the thread safe function EX, which is the first name that it existed under for the typed thread safe function. So I think I may be able to work on this again. The reason this was blocked was because the Node 10 was compilable using, I think, like GCC 4 or something. And this PR uses some functionality that was only available on GCC 5 and above. And the thought behind this PR is to rewrite the old thread safe function, which the non-typed one, to use the typed thread safe function, so that it wouldn't be basically a duplicate re-implementation of two different thread safe functions. So I think I'll be able to take a look at that this week.
Yeah, because now we don't have the limitation for the GCC compiler.
Right. The only concern would be if there are for some reason, some projects continue to use an older compiler and still want to use a newer version of Node add-on API. But
yeah, if you use Node 10 in production, you're right.
Right, but I think that's the reason why we have we change the major version every time we remove support for a Node major version as well, in order to keep it in track with that. So in my mind, it makes sense that, you know, if we have no longer support for Node 10, then we should be able to go ahead with this change. All right. That was a little sidetrack from the tracking issues. We can talk about debug testing for add-ons. I think this is what Michael's been working on, but I don't see any updates here. So we can continue. Then we have issues in the module, in the repos. Then does anybody have any specific ones that they would like to talk about before we just look at the list? Okay, I have one. I have, again, tried to work a little bit on this segmentation faults. I haven't really gotten anywhere concrete though. I ended up, running the test again, and this time I got a crash here with a reason of bad access. And I think this may hint a little bit to what we talked about earlier, where it was a possibility of some buffer overflow. But I'm still a little not too sure. I remember Legendacast said that he would also take a look at this whenever he has time. So hopefully next week we'll be able to see if he's looked into this at all. But right now, I still don't have any real concrete
If
reason.
it's buffer overflow, I wonder if we can use, sorry, popped up out of my mind, but Clang has a tool to do all these different memory checks.
Do you know what this tool is called?
It's like
Memory address and tiny checks.
it's kind of memory sanitizer. Sorry, like just.
Yeah, there was
Memory
this
sanitizer. Is it
memory sanitizer? Okay. So let's see. You just compile with this flag. All right. We can take a look at this then. I'll check if do you know if I would need to compile the module, only the module with this, or Node as well with this?
I would assume you need to compile Node.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we probably have some issues inside of Node, and module just shows up this issue somehow.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. And I have been able to compile the debug version before, so I'll try to add this flag. Okay.
We quite often find issues like this using this tool.
All right. I'll just put this in this chat. And then
Just something to try.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're kind of shooting in the dark, but anything that would help, you know, it makes sense to try. Feature and to possibly find these find a possible issue. Okay. This flag. Yep.
I think that if you are on macOS, you could generate the project for Xcode and see if Xcode has some utility that help you to check the memory. I remember that Xcode has this is a kind of utility. You can generate the project for Xcode using Node.js.
Okay.
I have the I don't remember the command, but
let's see if it goes.
I try. I find it now. Just yeah, Node.js. Yeah.
Okay.
So it generates the Xcode project. You can open the project from Xcode, and then you can use all the Xcode utility to debug your code, your native code.
Okay. Let me just do a quick Google if we can see if there's some sort of memory checking tools. Yeah, we were talking, we saw these various.
I
sanitizers.
have a link. It's an article that I wrote for this sometimes ago. I post in the chat.
Okay.
Here you can find all the necessary configuration to start working
Nice.
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Kevin, there is something else. I think some tool called address sanitizer, ASN.
Yes, I see
not-
that in this list here. Okay.
Right. Yes. Not memory sanitizer. Probably this one. Probably. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Just analyze memory and address check. And then we have some documentation on Xcode for diagnosing memory issues. Just kind of want to throw in all of these links that we have. Okay, and then here is the address sanitizer. All right. Because I use a Mac, so I should be able to do some of this here. Use these above methods to help troubleshoot issues. All right. We can post this and we'll go from there. Okay. Then let's see. Let's see if there are any other newly added issues. Nothing new in the last 2 weeks. There was one that came as, yes, okay, this one did come as stale. I remember seeing this this notification pop in my email. So we should probably remove this stale issue and add it to the list. This is an issue where they're saying that the thread safe function release crashes renderer on reload.
It's on Electron, is it right?
Yes, on Electron reload. And they had a theory that Node is destroying the thread safe functions before it frees the add-on. So maybe that's something that we can look to see if that's particularly the case. Let's see. This happens, which contains a TSFN. At some point, its destructor calls release before deleting the object, which calls finalize wrapper with context at some later moment, which is correct because this happens when the TSFN gets finalized. And then the function fails because the object has already been deleted. I mean, this flow makes sense because, you know, like if you are calling release in the destructor of some object, you know, like some object wrap or whatever. If you're calling release in the destructor, then of course that data isn't valid anymore. But then the finalize wrapper with context. This basically, this just wraps your, it's a wrap of your finalize callback in order to pass the context that was registered with the thread safe function. I don't, because I think even in some of our other add-ons, I worked on the oh, this should be on GitHub Node add-on examples. Because I recently worked on this async iterator one, and right, that's a function iterator. Yes. This one. And I think in here, I think I have the same, do I call? No, I don't have it release in the, I call release in the actual thread itself, not in the destructor. Okay, so never mind on that. But I feel like it's valid to call release in the destructor, but maybe that's something that we can take a look at. Because I don't think finalize wrapper call, this finalize wrapper doesn't actually access any of the thread safe functions values, I don't think. Let's see. So this is what gets passed to the, oh, I had to reinstall various stuff on my laptop, so that's why this is highlighted weird. But this is the finalizer callback that gets passed to the threads, to the new thread safe function. And close this. And this does not actually, I mean, it's static, so it doesn't access any members or anything like that. Finalize data. Okay, which is coming, which is a new object created from, you know, the, which you've passed as your data for your finalizer. Yeah, so I think that's valid, but I think if we maybe it'll help if we can get a repository that reproduces this issue. And I think multiple people had talked about this. So also BB Fat and this guy here. Okay. Because this is a little, it'll be a little extensive since it is used in, since they're using Electron, you know. It's not as simple just to create our own little reproduction of it. Okay.
It sounds like they work around it inside of Electron, right?
Yeah.
Yes, let's see why this issue is closed. They were having an issue with FS events, I think it was. Taking in the commits, so the issue was because of an old FS events being used. So this doesn't really pertain to the thread safe functions at all. Like this doesn't even have any TSFN functions in the call stuff. Oh, here it is. Release thread safe function. Okay. Interesting. Well, so they resolved this issue by updating FS events though. So I'm not exactly sure how they could be, maybe have been doing something in the finalizer of the callback function that was using FS events. But I don't think, like, calling this release thread safe function would not immediately call the finalizer in the same stack. Well, let's just ask for the repo, and then maybe we can get some information on this. And then I will remove the stale label and add it to the stale issues. Okay. Let's see. Other than that, I don't think there was anything new that popped up. We may need to do some cleanup of some of the older issues. Maybe we can do that a little offline. Just go through them and see if they're still viable. If not, ask to get them deleted or add them to the stale issues list so that we know to discuss them in the next meeting. All right. Then there are also some PRs on that you were working on. Because I saw Michael commented on one of them regarding naming or something like that. I think it was this ref type one.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how to respond. Because honestly, I want to have one more reference type. I want to have weak reference. Ref counted weak reference.
And what would that give us?
So in some sense, then you have a reference. It's like a ref counted object, right? So technically today, in our existing references, you have this ref count, and it's kind of strong ref count. If it's ref count 0, so it becomes weak. But say if you look on the C++ standard library, you have something like a stud share PTR, which like strong reference, and you have also stud weak PTR, which is effectively a weak reference. But you also, for weak PTR, you can have multiple people who can hold to it. But yeah, I didn't think about this very much through yet. So that's why I believe if in future I want to add this weak reference, this new naming scheme may not work that well.
I see what you mean.
Ref type any versus ref type object. It's kind of, can we add weak after that, or weak object? I don't know.
I see what you're saying. Okay. So then, because both of these are strong references, right? And then what you're saying is that if we were to add the ability of weak reference, then we would need to have a weak equivalent of both of these. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, like object is not always strong reference. Object can be weak or strong.
Depending on the ref count. Okay.
Right. Any would be just strong. And I was thinking it would be nice also to have weak reference. It's why kind of this naming, it's why I still didn't answer, because I just couldn't put in my mind completely this stuff, because it's not exactly semantic I want to with this ref type to say. It's not about like what this ref type is applied to, because if we're saying any object, we're saying this ref type is applied only to object, or this ref type applied to any type of object. For me, it was ref type more like if it's strong reference, or it's like weak or strong, or just weak.
Gotcha. Okay. And then Michael also pointed out this question here. Will other JavaScript engines support making persistent references to all types?
So technically speaking, if we look how our reference is implemented today, our references, this is what we hold internally, right? Like, say even V8 does not support ref-counted references. They only have effectively this unique ownership in some sense. So our references is totally kind of artificial construct. So even if engine does not support it, nobody stops us to maintain it. The thing actually, what I think I was wrong previously, I said at some point that Hermes supports references to symbols. And I think currently our references allow you to have ref counted for symbols. But this is not exactly what's true. Like it's
Gotcha.
we may need to revoke this because symbols cannot be weak references in Hermes. So actually, it's one thing to have just strong reference. We can have strong reference to anything, but weak semantic in most JavaScript engines only can be applicable to objects or functions. Objects like objects.
Okay. So then, but then is it possible for, so the engine itself does not allow this type of reference on symbols, but then is it possible to implement that reference behavior on the, I guess, the Node API level, that layer that uses the engine, if that makes sense, that question?
I'm not sure. I think
Right.
in order to have weak reference semantic, what we need to have support from engine, which pretty much engine says like, okay, then this object is garbage collected. We have this special kind of finalizer notification. So you need to have an object. But in Hermes, as I was working like a few months ago on this Node API for Hermes implementation, I found that symbols there implemented mostly like I think it's like unique strings. It's what these symbols are. So technically, from this perspective, symbols there are not objects. So technically, whenever symbols get destroyed, we don't have any notification. Thus, we can't implement true weak pointer semantic because we never get this notification back.
I see. Okay. Then do you think, would there be issues adding these types when implemented on the Hermes engine?
Well, for whatever we have right now, not like it's what I already have in my implementation. I have a strong reference for any type and weak reference for objects. So this is kind of very natural. So for
okay, I see. I gotcha. Okay. All right. That all makes sense then.
So let me think through it's a little bit more, and I'll respond it in the next few days to this. So it's I just trying to explain the reason why I didn't answer yet. I saw this response. I was really excited that Michael finally looked at this pull request.
Gotcha.
Just not this name's not really kind of settle with me. Because honestly, I want to have 3 type of references. But as I kind of thinking through about these 2 types, the 3rd type I didn't think through yet.
much. Okay. So whenever you just have some chance to respond or update, that'd be great.
Mhm.
All right, and I think you had a couple more here. We had this splitting the finalizers.
Yeah, I still need to update it after legend cast. He did changes to finalizer, so he pretty much changed the same code. I need to kind of merge this pull request with his changes. It's not done yet.
Right, okay. Then this poster here, we talked about this this extend node API to libnode, which I think was for the embedder versions. And we posted something last week, and then he did respond. So the one, okay, so what we had mentioned as our concerns were that for the first one, odds are that people that are embedding Node need to have some, fine tuning of the underlying JavaScript engine, and also that some of the terms that are used in this pull request, such as platform, are not specific or are not the same in other platforms. And he had commented this here, which I thought was an interesting comment. He doesn't think that an API platform is V8 specific, because every engine would have a common initialization procedure. I mean, I don't really know how to respond to that. But I mean, I think it, like, in the long run, I think it would be nice to have some sort of embedding API. It really just all depends on how fine-grained that we would like to make it. And I'm really not sure the best way to go through and sort of identify what needs to be changed or whatever, if that makes sense.
I think our main concern was last time that this new API has been added to this cross-engine API header files, and we're saying like this JS native API.h, and this JS native API.h is truly should work. No, it's actually not necessarily even Node.js specific. We're saying that it's a cross-engine generic APIs which kind of we're proposing to use between JavaScript engine and native code. So
right.
Yeah. I think it's one of the kind of biggest concerns here. Like we definitely, even with an API platform, maybe if not VA specific, not, but it should not be definitely not part of with JS native API.
Right. Okay. Greater customability of the engine startup to be sorted and where the line should be drawn. Should we support mixed use with conversions from V8 local and an API? Right. I mean, he really didn't address our comment about being inside a different header file. But I also don't want to like create too many different, API files, if that makes sense. But I mean, if it makes sense to create a new one in order to have the best functionality, maybe that is the route to go.
Let's think about about different scenarios. So far, we have header files which are mostly used from modules, right? So these new APIs, they're not supposed to be used from modules. So these new APIs are supposed to be used from correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I misunderstand the kind of purpose here, but I think it's should be used from some application who is hosting Node.js. So hosting scenario is different from extension scenario. So one API is for extensions, and kind of there should be Uber API for the hoster, right? So I think that these new APIs, it's definitely kind of for application to host Node.js as a library. I think it should be different set of APIs.
That does make sense. That does.
It's why different header. I know, like, we don't want to kind of create more headers, but that's I guess it would be one of the reasons.
Gotcha. Right.
So, for example, imagine you have a Node.js exe project, and you have a module, and this module wants to host Node DLL. I think this scenario must not work.
Right.
This scenario probably will fail miserably because all these different static variables and some other stuff. And also answers to his question, like, do we want to have ABI safe API to mix and match with V8 APIs? I think it's not a good idea, because what's the purpose of having ABI safe API is if you using non-ABI safe functions.
Right. Okay. This embedding API into a separate header. Okay, and then this one here, should we? I'm not exactly sure what he means by mixed use with conversions between V8 local and an API. I'll ask him to clarify a bit. Because, I mean, yeah, it does seem weird if this is.
Maybe he meant some internal conversion. Yeah, you're
right.
Not very clear.
Yeah. So let's see if he can give us a little bit of clarification on that. Okay. But his the PR does pass all checks, so it's really now just a matter of reviewing and finalizing and making decisions on how.
Are there any special new unit tests or tests introduced we actually exercise in this new API?
I think I did see, yes, an API embedding, this one here, where he's calling those two functions that he's suggesting. An API create platform, and I think this one does the create environment, yes. And then he has some other helpers for call me and wait me. Let's see.
This approach, and we just pass in all these parameters exactly how we pass to Node.js executable file. I think it's great, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? People can always apply this string with parameters, and it's in some sense it's ABI safe. We just have a string, right? It's very, very kind of simple.
Right. I think there was two different string arguments, one for the engine and one for the script. If we go to create platform. I think it's yes. There's the CLI arguments and Node.js CLI options. So like we had the concern of, being able to configure the engine or the underlying engine as much as possible, if you're doing the embedding. And I guess this current setup with these two different string arguments, that would work as long as all of the configurations that you want to do are actually handled in those string arguments, for like increasing the heap size or something like that. I'm not sure if there would be some other type of configurations that you would want to do that is on the underlying this underlying platform wrapper or whatever, There's also this this thread pool size. I don't know if this would be always configurable by other engines, but if not, I guess it could just be ignored. I don't know.
I think if it will be just node specific API, so we in this case we don't really we should not concern about other engines at all in this case.
Right. Okay.
So I think what we're saying, like it's some kind of API which we want to host Node.js as a DLL, or like as a module effectively.
Right. So in that case, this sort of makes sense because they're all pretty not node specific, but we wouldn't have to worry about other engines using them if we did have it in this secondary header file that's specific for node hosting API.
And we want it to be a C-based API for like one reason, like so if somebody wants to use as a host application, not C++, but some other language, say Rust or like C#, whatnot, they can speak through C-based APIs, but working with C++, because of all these mangled names, it's not so easy.
Yeah.
So definitely, there is a lot of value using C instead of C++.
Okay. But yeah, so he does have some unit tests, and so everything is passing. So it's just now sort of finalizing if we do want this sort of separation to occur. And Michael will be back next week, so maybe have some additional input onto that. So I'll go ahead and make that comment. And then I think I saw one other, yes, this inheritance one. I think we had discussed, I remember you had looked at this and made a comment regarding the adding base class as a value, as an argument rather, instead of having to call this way of three separate classes or functions here. And his main concern was that adding a new parameter was not possible unless we create an API defined class 2. But then I highlighted that since we renamed an API to Node API, newly added symbols use Node API prefix. So instead of having an API defined class 2, we could prefix everything with Node API. So we would have Node API declare class and Node API instantiate class. Or rather, this.
Yeah, the proposal to extend define class.
Yeah, just one.
Yeah,
functions. Okay. Yeah, this was his original suggestion to have these three, and then we can just have one for Node API defined class, which adds the base class, right? Okay. I commented that almost 2 weeks ago, but there hasn't been any additional work on this one. It's still sort of failing on the initial linting of the commit message, but maybe he'll continue working on this in the future. But this has been a highly requested feature as well. I remember Gabriel had also tried working on something like this that used like, he ended up using run script, I think, and was running JavaScript code dynamically in order to implement this. So I think it would be very beneficial to have, engine support for this. Because I remember seeing a couple of issues in Node add-on API about how to properly perform inheritance as well.
Yeah, the biggest challenge is calling base class constructor. I think it's all about, and it's not simple. If you look at what typically implementation for low end engines, you have to use some kind of reflection, some other kind of more modern APIs. But yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm also wondering, because the reason why he broke this up was, I think, in his example, like he ended up needing to return a function template, or at least some opaque type that represents a function template. Because that's the thing that you have to use in V8 to actually extend the class, from my understanding. I'm not sure if just providing in a new base class parameter, which would be a real JavaScript value. I don't know if we would be able to, for example, get the function template from this value in order to do the instantiation. If that makes sense.
The proposal was like, then now we create a new class. We can always associate using some kind of internal field. We can associate with a function template. So technically,
yeah.
But you're right. It may be some other scenarios. If we extend in one native function template with another function template, it would probably work. But the question now, like I say, if you have some kind of JavaScript class and you want to have native code somehow to inherit from it, it becomes more interesting.
Yes, that is also I can see that being a problem. And I think that is a valid use case, like you have some JavaScript class that you construct or create the definition for, and then you want your C++ native class to extend that one. Right. And then if we're just modifying our our definition of the what we store for an API value that we return from the defined class, we wouldn't have that ability to do that from the JavaScript class. Right. And I'm not sure, I think one of the issues before why doing this inheritance was so difficult was that there was no way to get the function template from a class. And I think that's why Gabriel had to do some sort of run script with, running JavaScript code in the module itself in order to do that. I don't remember how it was done, but I do remember he had to do some weird hacky stuff with run script, and then it didn't fly. So he ended up, closing that.
Yeah,
But that is
because we
still
need
like,
to have the full matrix, like a native versus a JavaScript object, and should like 4 different cases, like for this sake, like 3 cases, right? So it's native from JavaScript, and JavaScript from native. So always 3 different scenarios must work somehow. And I
right,
believe is not addressed by exposing kind of function template as one of the special APEC parameter, because I'm not sure how can you get it for JavaScript object? Probably not.
right. Probably not. Yeah, I don't think we can. So we're almost out of time. So let me just finish this comment. That we need to ensure that we can perform. We should also. JavaScript defined class instead of a natively defined. Be sure that we support following 3 extension scenarios. 1, extending a natively defined class. Sending a JavaScript. Having a JavaScript defined class extend a natively.
Yeah, probably like third will be trivial, right? So I don't know. Yeah, definitely we need to kind of the we work on something like this. We need to consider all the scenarios.
Right. Okay. Okay. Accent natively. All right, we can comment that. Then we are a little over time, but is there anything else that anybody else would like to discuss or talk about before we close it for the week?
No.
All right,
Discussion.
then I wish everybody a good weekend, and I will catch you guys online later.
See you.
Bye.